What's good, YouTube? It's Kyle from HospitalityMD presenting another episode of our interview series right here on YouTube and also available anywhere you get your podcasts. Before we get started, subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, give us a thumbs up, and be ready to share this video with your hospitality friends and family. Now, this week's episode is with Marquis Slay. He is a regional sales manager for the Oliver Companies, overseeing the sales efforts of 5 hotels in their portfolio. Now, we don't talk so much about his hotel experience today as we talk about his hospitality that takes place outside of the hotel. We discovered Marquis comes from humble beginnings and was able to overcome his circumstances by mentorship and hospitality. He's a volunteer now with Orchard Children's Services, which helps with family preservation and also coaches youth basketball and track and field. This episode is all about how hospitality can redirect at-risk youth. Enjoy, and we'll see you at the end of the video. Do you remember the first time that you felt hospitality? Whether this could be, and you may have heard me ask other people this on the podcast, but this is kind of like the icebreaker question I like to use a lot. And this could be before you got into the industry, as a child, anything that you can remember, that first moment that kind of enunciated you to feeling like there was something special about hospitality.
Yeah, definitely. Well, my mentor is the president and CEO of a nonprofit called Orchard Children's Services out of Michigan. And it's probably one of the biggest nonprofits there right now for family preservation, independent living, and foster care. And just the way that they cared and the way that they always went, the extra steps and always the extra mile to make sure people had what they needed to live and just make people in bad situations more comfortable. And that was probably my first, even though that's some sort of hospitality, just in a different field. But, that really cemented my journey to hospitality. Like, okay, I want to always make sure that I'm doing right for others. And, if there's a problem, you're able to solve it. We need more people. He always said we need more people that have solutions rather than add to the problem, and always want to be one of those people. So, as long as you can make people smile and make somebody's day easier, especially in hospitality, that's one of the main things. You can make somebody's journey to your restaurant or your hotel easier, they'll always remember you.
Yeah, because I always like to say that, like, when people talk about, like, oh, what's your definition of hospitality? Everybody has something different, but I always say hospitality is relieving other people's anxiety. Yes. So it's making things easier for others, because no matter what you do, where you go, if you're going into a new situation, I don't care if you're as cool as a cucumber, like, you still have that little bit of anxiety, I feel like, inside of you, that's like, you're going into something unexpected, you're going into a new situation, whether that's a restaurant or a hotel or whatever, or whether that's you don't have what you need to be contributing to society in the way that you best can. You don't have what you need to be your true self, and you have anxiety, and somebody can be there to help you. Because you said that was Orchard, what was the name of the organization?
Orchard Children's Services.
Gotcha. So I love that, and I love what you said about the chairman of the organization, where we need to be people who provide solutions, not contribute to the problem. So what was your exposure to Orchard Children's Services? How did you get to know that organization?
I actually got to know it through a summer program. Like where they line kids up and they give them jobs at certain places. And I was there as an intern, as a paid intern. And I just found it fascinating, just being from a place of poverty and being with an organization that handles that are, pretty much put in those positions to take it to the forefront and relieve people of those problems. I always wanted to learn the organizational and structure part of it. So, that was my introduction. And once I got there, it was so much more. Like I always thought it was, the way that they make it seem is like if you look at it from a different light from the outside looking in, you kind of just have social workers and intake, and they just, put kids in and ship them out. But it's so much more, and they don't see the work, the hours that, social workers and these intake care workers are just putting in with these kids, trying to fix their mentalities, trying to uplift them every day. Some of them aren't seeing their parents. Some of them are coming in just to see their parents for an hour. And, if you're away from your mom, your provider, if you're taken away from them and you can only see them for an hour every month, when you see them, you kind of act out too. And that puts pressure on the social workers because they're like, they're with these kids all the time and people don't see that. And that's what really stuck out to me, that you actually have to care to be in those positions and really want to make a difference in a kid's life and their parents' lives because they're trying to get their kids back. So, it's so many different facets to it that I learned through it, especially emotionally and learning not to take your work home with you. Because in those positions, a lot of people, you feel for those kids, you take them in as your own, and you might, take your work home with you because you don't know, this kid just saw his parent and just bust out crying, and now he's just crying the whole time during the visit and then after, and now they're acting up. It's just a way to show that they miss their being with their family.
So you said that you started there as you were an intern, a paid intern, kind of helping out with the organization.
Yeah.
But you also mentioned, were you saying that you came from poverty as well? So it was that connection.
Yeah. I grew up in Detroit, and it was the 90s wasn't really a good year for Detroit, but it was I grew up in a single family home. 5 siblings. So for me, and I'm in the middle, so I always knew that my mom's working all the time, and I always knew that I would have to provide at some point. So as soon as I turned, 14, I was out looking for a job and a way to help her.
So, okay, so you're Detroit. You grew up in a family with one parent, but you had 5 brothers and sisters.
Mm-hmm.
And so you didn't know about Orchard Children's Services till after you would kind of come up through your upbringing. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Correct.
So I'm wondering, right? In the area that you grew up, were there other people who were your age? At 14, you said, okay, it's time for me to go out and get a job. Were there other people there who said, okay, I'm 14, time to go to the streets or time to do something else? Did you see that there were kind of those 2 options that people took? Was that something that you had exposure to at the time?
Yeah. Like a lot of my friends, I always remember my middle school principal. We always have these assemblies when you're about to go to high school, and he brought everybody who was in 8th grade to the assembly, and he's like, look to your left, look to your right. By the time you end your 9th grade year, one of them won't be there. And he said it'll be because a lot of them will drop out, or a lot of them will wind up getting killed. And sure enough, a lot of them, like I lost a lot of my friends, to the streets, I guess, at a young age, 14, 15, 4 or 5 of my friends that died at that time. So, it was one of those things where what you see is what you get. And if that's the only thing that you know and the only thing that you see, it becomes a part of your life, especially when you're growing up in it. I was lucky enough to have, my grandparents in my life as well as my mom. And, for me, it was always a point of, okay, I can do this. I can go this route, but and make quick money. But it's easier. It's easier, but in the long run, it doesn't help. Because fast money doesn't last long. I mean, you can look at any, anybody that's taking that path. It doesn't last long. So for me, I always knew I had to work harder and find connections and do it the right way.
Yeah, it's again, it might take a little longer, but the rewards are going to be everlasting. Your network is your net worth, and
Exactly.
all that kind of stuff, and your reputation precedes you. That's all true. I know it sounds corny, but I think it's true. I think that the only reason why, Hospitality MD exists, and the only reason why we can keep doing what we're doing is because we keep meeting new people and keep making new connections. Just like you and I just met and made a connection. Now we're talking, getting to know each other, and then who knows what that may lead to, even if it just means that, we made a new friend. I think that's worth something.
Exactly.
Even, it doesn't always have to be an exchange or a transaction. It can, relationships are valuable and they're powerful. And I think that's what, myself and Greg, who does the show with me, we, over the summer, we went to Reading, Pennsylvania, which is one of the poorest cities in the country. And they have a hotel there. It's the #1 DoubleTree hotel. And what we found was the case, and he employs second chance. So people who had been in the streets, people who have been in prison, people who have had addiction problems, and they use the hotel as a vehicle to actually bring change to the community,
Awesome.
and employ people. Yeah, it's literally, that's the North Star now. That's what we're trying to do. We just want to meet somebody with the capital to make it happen. And then we can kind of help do that for a community in need. And I think what I learned there was that, you can have like a government program, or you can have, something like that, and you're just one of the numbers. You might get some help, but there's no relationship. And you see that that's where that cycle of incarceration would keep happening, or that cycle of poverty, or that cycle of addiction, or whatever the problem that anybody that we met there was dealing with. Then all of a sudden, after spending a quarter of a century in and out of prison for a lot of these people, they meet one person who offers them meaningful employment, a reason to get out of bed every day. That's not to go out into the streets. They get a way to be selfless and to actually be a servant to others, give back, make the community better. And that relationship that's the key difference in those people going back into that cycle of incarceration, poverty, and addiction, or to move their life forward and get better. And it's good for them, but it's also good for the guests, because the guest comes in, they realize, oh wow, that person who served me at breakfast spent 20 years in prison. I would have never guessed. Now my frame of mind is expanded, and I'm going to be more understanding and generous to those around me. And it just continues to kind of make a ripple effect that changes the world. So I think you're right. Like, the key is the relationship. That's always the key. And you were able to did you learn that when you started going with Oliver, or not with Oliver Companies, excuse me, but with Orchard Children's Services? You started there, you saw that relationship. Tell me a little bit about that initial kind of seeing that for the first time.
Yeah, it was Mike Williams, which is the president and CEO. He's still the president and CEO to this day. He took me under his wing, and would take me to these fundraisers, where he would just introduce me as myself, and I got to meet prominent people around the city, around Michigan, and then you gain those relationships with them, and they kind of take you in as their own, and then they're inviting you to just to come over and give you knowledge, and just various projects to work on with them, and it's kind of an addiction once you, just like anything, like you gain connections, and then you just want more. It's all about if it's a positive wanting more, or is it a negative wanting more, and for me, it was one of those things where he would introduce me to, me being from where I'm from, you go somewhere, like I've never been outside of Detroit. So every event we're going to is is outside the city limits, and everything's bigger, everything's clean. And just the people are different. You're looking at meals like, wow, you're spending $100 on this, like just things like that. But then you get exposed to it, and then you notice that it's normal. Whereas you brought somebody with you that's not used to it, they'll look at it like me, in shock at everything that they see. So it was a good positive reinforcement for me in a way.
So was that kind of like seeing that different lifestyle, I guess, if you want to call it that, because you were changing your environment, you were getting out of the city, you were looking at different, people and connections that you had never seen before. You were like, wait, we're spending $100 a plate. Like all this stuff was so new. Was that part of that thing that clicked where you're like, wait, if I keep on this, like this could be my new reality. Like I won't have to go back into the city limits after that. I can keep pushing forward and keep going. Was it almost like a motivation of the future of what could be?
Yeah, it's kind of like when you get an idea and it just clicked, and that's kind of what it was. It was like, okay, all these people, everybody I'm surrounded by are entrepreneurs, or they went to college. Some of them didn't go to college, but they still made a way doing what they knew, doing a skill that they just knew better than others. And, it just clicked in me that, okay, you don't have to do these certain things. You can still, you can still do other things to make a positive impact. So, just seeing that helped me get to where I am today, for sure.
How old were you when you started out with going to these events with Orchard and everything like that?
15.
50. Okay, so this was like right after you were maybe just starting out high school. So this was like pivotal adolescent kind of moment where it was kind of like, it was time to start deciding what the future was going to be. And thank God you got with Orchard Children's Services. Sounds like they were doing some amazing things for people.
They really do. And the partnerships that they have, they always like two of the big ones are Bike Day, which they partner with Myers, that's in Michigan, and Kroger, the Detroit Lions and Pistons always do Thanksgiving for them, and also the Pistons takes kids shopping every year. I don't recall them doing this year just because of COVID.
Right.
And then we have our signature event that brings almost $100,000 to $200,000 in just for people in poverty. So they do a lot of good things, and they bring a lot of prominent people that don't know about the city that stay in Michigan, and they come down just because they want to be a part of that.
So have you seen, so it worked for you, right? So you started in poverty, you're no longer in poverty now, right? You've kind of made that transition as a result of making connections, working with the community, educating yourself, working hard, all those things. Have you seen that same thing with like a kid who started out at point A, kind of in poverty, maybe didn't have the right, maybe didn't have much hope, and then they got with Orchard and they got with kind of building the community, and they eventually overcame that, and now they're in a better place? Have you seen that?
Oh yeah. I have numerous of occurrences with people who were around my age, who were in the system, who came up through it and went off to universities, and now they live in different states. One prime example was he's my best friend to this day. Me and him started there together, and we're both on different paths, but working with Mr. Williams got us to, like I said, knowing different people and exposing us to the different environments. And now he's in Florida, and me and him work on different projects. Like he has a Body by RJ now, which he just opened up his own gym in Lake Mary, Florida. And we're working on expanding that and putting different things in. And now we're going to start a program down there for adolescents and different youth, so we can get them into the gym to work on their, work physically and mentally, and just have them somewhere they can go and be, and also study and just learn social skills. Because certain kids, they don't get that attention, And if you don't get that attention at that age, you intend to act out later on.
So this is interesting and great story, by the way. I'm actually, I don't know where you said it was in Lake Mary,
Yeah,
Florida.
Lake Mary, Florida. So it's right outside Orlando.
Gotcha. I'm in Tampa right now, temporarily. My parents live out here, so I came
Okay.
to visit them. I live in Chicago normally, um, but yeah, that's really cool. So there's a lot of talk right now in the government and just in society right now about like what can we do to, or that sentiment of like the wealth gap, but the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer and all this stuff, and everybody has their own way of solutions. This is not intended to be a political conversation by any means, but you do have experience not only with yourself but also with the friends of yours and youth that you've worked with who have been able to overcome their circumstances. In your opinion, like what's the difference? Like what's your advice? Is there anything that we all can do to help? Like what's your take on all that?
That's such a I can tell you now I don't have all the answers.
Sure.
It's a broad statement because it's so much that we can do, but it's more or less, are we going to take those steps? I mean, just to take, if you were to go to a city like Chicago and take 10 inner city kids out of Chicago and put them into let's say one of the suburb schools or a private school, those kids automatically get the exposure to a different type of education than you get in the inner city. A whole different environment from having to walk home and worry about getting robbed or hurt, having to, or having to worry about getting a meal and those type of things. So it seems pretty simple when we say it, but then to put the structure in is a whole nother thing. I feel like just getting kids that exposure at around 12, at least 12, to get them going, to get them motivated to want to do better things. Because if you go to school somewhere where nobody's doing anything, and your teachers are even struggling to teach you because they don't have the books to really, they have books from 30 years ago still they're trying to teach you out of. And also they know their kids aren't eating, so they're using their own money to make sure that their kids are eating in school. And it's a lot of stuff the government could do, but at the same time, just having that exposure and getting them exposed to a different scenario of how they can live their lives. I think that's the biggest thing, because if you think about it, kids watch so much TV and a lot of videos and everything, and that's how they see their lives. And the people that's portraying them are people that look like me, that's telling them, oh, you have to be in the streets, you have to sell drugs, you have to do all these X amount of things. And even though it's not real, it becomes perception. And your perception is how you see your life in a way. So, a lot of kids that's that age, that's what they look at. And then that's what they see. So, and that's what they potentially want to be. So, if you just put them in front of successful people that are, lawyers, doctors, podcasts, people that are doing like what me and you do in hospitality,
Right.
like just different things like that. And that'll take a back burner. Like all that extra stuff that's, the diamonds and everything and the shine, all that'll take a back seat to what you really need to do to even get that. And if you would even want that, once you really learn what it is. Because I used to be one of those people where I'm like, oh, I want to get that. Like, chains and all that. And then I started hanging with people who had money in there. It's not. That's a waste of money. That is a waste of money. And to this day, I don't buy any jewelry. Like I get a lot of things given to me from different companies and stuff, but besides that, why would you waste your money? There's so many other things we can do with our money. And I think that's why a lot of people stay in poverty, because they live beyond their means, and they see what, these people on TV are getting paid to put in your face. And you don't have that.
Right. So it's like, the kids, they see their immediate surroundings, they see that maybe in their immediate area, it doesn't seem like anybody's doing good. School is not working out for them. Maybe their home life isn't good. Maybe it could be a single parent household, or
Exactly.
the family structure isn't solid. They don't see what a good family looks like. And then you go and you look at different media outlets and you see, were you talking like you see rappers and other people who are kind of just flexing the cars, the girls, the chains, all that kind of
Exactly.
stuff. And
All
then
these media influencers, that's getting paid to show you this. Like they're not, and I had to learn being with a lot of consultants and people who handle money that, some of these people, they be like, that's not even theirs. Like, like they're renting it and loaning out jewelry. So
right. And it's kind of like the image of success looks like exploiting other people. It looks like it looks like you want to look like you're better than other people. It looks like you are obsessed with material possessions. But that's not happiness, right? And the success isn't monetary. The success is feeling like you're contributing something, right? It's feeling like you're making a difference in others' lives. So you say that rather than than kind of showing that exposure to that, like your perception is your reality. If you give kids the exposure to hope of what could be, or what happens when you have a mentor, or when you can build a relationship with somebody or see what somebody else is doing, that hope is enough for some people to be able to make that decision on their own to choose. Because I imagine that you've maybe also seen some people who tried, but they just couldn't be, maybe they weren't ready to take that leap, or they fell back into what they were comfortable doing, even through maybe Orchard Children's Services or something else. Have you seen somebody who hasn't been successful making that transition?
yeah. I mean, like I said, it's not everybody takes that step when they're ready. Like just like people who you were saying, been locked up, and they finally get out and it clicks. Okay, they just need that one person to put them in that situation where they can be successful. But sometimes, success isn't ready, or you're not ready for success. That's just like if you were to take, like you were saying, somebody who's been in poverty, or somebody who's been living a certain way, and try to tell them, that's like somebody who eats meat and you try to make them vegan, like right off the bat. And you're telling them all these good things that it does for your body, and they try it for a day or two. And then, eventually they're like, I'm gonna go back to, how it was, until they're ready. And then, it might not be that they're not ready, but they might have just been exposed to too much at once, and they need to take it in their consumption. I've
Right.
seen that happen too, where I went to, like when I was in college, you get kids that are on scholarship with me who's never been out of their city. And then you come to a place like Superior, Wisconsin, which is predominantly white, and you don't know how to act. You're like, you don't know who to talk to, you don't know where to go, and you're not used to this environment. And you can either thrive in it or ask for help, or you kind of just, shut down, and, you leave. And, a large percentage will do that. But it's not like they're failing. That's just, one failure in their life that maybe they just weren't ready for. They weren't ready for that, to take that extra step. But it's not like they won't take the extra step. I think, some people that take a step back sometimes need to take a step back so they can see it for what it is, and then take that step forward.
You got me thinking, right? Like, it's one thing to give somebody like a scholarship, right? And they can go and they like, that's great, that somebody would be able to have that opportunity and not necessarily be held back by the financial situation that's out of their control. But it's almost like that one thing isn't enough necessarily to equal a successful educational experience. You need, like, because you were on scholarship, like you mentioned, but you were going to those banquets, had a mentor to help you kind of get you acclimated to different environments. You were able to travel outside the city a little bit in high school, meet different people, go to different events, learn how to socialize, learn how to network, learn how to get outside of your comfort zone. But do you think it would have been different for you if they just said, okay, here's your scholarship and we're going to just plop you on the college campus in a place you've never been and just say, good luck, right?
Yeah.
It seems like there's almost needs to be kind of like a multi-pronged approach, because the social aspect is so important. Like, why would somebody go back to what they were used to, even if it wasn't good for them? Like going back to the streets, even if you had a scholarship or whatever that situation may be. Well, because maybe you don't feel like you relate to somebody, or maybe you don't feel like you don't fit in. Everybody wants to fit in. We're pack animals, right? So if you feel like you don't fit in, I get it, or if you feel like you're on your own or something, you need somebody to be on your side.
Yeah. And that's something that I always, like, even when I was in college, I tried to address with the university, and we made various programs for when I was there to when kids come in from, impoverished areas, that we would put them with mentors that are from areas that they're from, that can show them around if they need help, just to have that person to be able to lean on. But like you said, that's something that I think a lot of people think, that just because you throw money at a situation, money isn't always the golden ticket to get out of, to even get your mind out of poverty. That's another thing. You go to a different environment. The main thing I look at is comfortability. A lot of people aren't comfortable. For me, I got put in so many uncomfortable situations that I had to kind of get out of my mode, I guess, in a way. And I'm an introvert. Like, even doing this interview, I'm still like, still nervous doing it. But
well, hopefully you're sort of comfortable by now. I mean, I'm at ease. I feel comfortable talking to you. Hopefully we make it a hospitable environment for you nonetheless.
yeah. Oh no, I feel it's not you. It's just me in general. Like, I'm an introvert, and I'm an introvert, and Clubhouse, I think, is one of those places where an introvert can actually speak and everything, because they're not on camera. I'm so used to being in front of people that I always freeze up. and but yeah, I think, and that's just about being comfortable, because if I wasn't how I was when I was younger, I wouldn't be comfortable doing this. And like you said, those interactions, with just different people from different demographics, and the diverse dialogues that you have with them, it really helps, rather than when you come from one place where they only speak one language and they only know one thing, and you go to a college campus, or you go to a business conference or something, and you won't even, you're there and you won't even talk to anybody, because you don't think you have anything to relate to them with, and you just, you shut down. And same thing with kids. I mean, you're still 17, 18 going to a college campus. They think, you might have a full ride, you might have everything taken care of, but they haven't helped you adapt socially. Especially if you're just a kid going to a campus. Like, if I can say it's different for athletes going to a campus, because you kind of already go into a culture where they're going to accept, rather than if you're a kid getting a scholarship, leaving from wherever you're from, even small town areas. Like, I can even say, if you're from what small place that you probably know, I don't know, like, a small town, and then you go to like a Rockford, Illinois, or University of Chicago. You come from a town of 200 people, and your graduating class was 12. Now you're in a school with 16,000 people, and you're on your own, because it's not like you don't get those same vices as an athlete, because before you get there, you already have a coach and people that's going to be on you, kind of a structure. You're going from being in an environment that you're used to going somewhere where as a person that's not doing anything but going to college to better themselves, to being stuck there, to just being plopped in, like you said, and nobody to help you. You don't know anybody. All you have is a counselor. And to them at bigger universities, you're a number.
I actually, I witnessed that myself firsthand when I went to school. I dropped out, by the way, but I don't know. I don't know if it was for the social reasons. Maybe it was. I guess I have to do some reflecting on that. Now that we're talking about it, I'm thinking, what went wrong with me? Or maybe I just didn't want to do it. I don't know. But I can tell you about a friend of mine who he was, it's kind of like the same thing, like whether you're from the inner city or you're from a rural area. Like this, my friend was from a small town in Illinois with nobody. I mean, he basically just saw his grandma and grandpa and like a couple people at school, and that was it. And then he came and went to University of Iowa, which is like 35,000 kids, Big Ten school. And, this is what going on probably 4 or 5 years later. So when I first met him, he wanted to be a pediatric neurosurgeon. So basically as high up as you can go, like that was his expectation. Now, 5 years later, nothing wrong with it, right? Nothing wrong with what he's doing, but he's still living in the college town and he's a clerk at a pawn shop, and he dropped out of school. And like, and I keep talking to him, like, what do you want to do now? What do you want to do now? I still stay in touch with him to this day. And I ask him those questions, and he just, I don't know. I'm just going to stay here and I'm doing what I'm doing now. And that's just all I'm going to do. And it's just, I can't help but think, you're inspiring me after we've been talking, like, what if there was more socialization? What if there was more exposure at a younger age? All these things, it's like, and then there's pressure to do things you're not ready for. Like just because he was smart in his own, not saying he's not smart, because he's a really smart guy, but he was like number one in his class of like, 20, right, at his high school. So he said, okay, well, I'm the smart one, so I'm going to go to this big school, go to medical school, become a neurosurgeon. And that's like my legacy now, but you're not ready for that because you haven't been exposed to anything, so and then you're taking somebody who was very smart, and you're making them feel like a failure, right? Because it's kind of like, oh, I'm a dropout, I didn't accomplish what I wanted to do. Well, no, you're not a failure. You just, like you said, you're just not ready yet. You have to take a step back, and maybe it takes you longer, but there's very real damage that having a big failure on you're going home to your family and saying, I didn't do this, I didn't set out what I wanted to do, or I'm not on academic probation now, or I dropped out, or now I'm doing this, or I just party all the time. Like, it makes you feel like shit. And then that real damage that's transcending. At first it was just the social problems, right? But then you put somebody into an environment they're not ready for, and then they fail, and now they feel like even worse than they did before. So it's kind of a snowball effect, if you will, at least in my observations.
No, you're totally right. And I went to college with friends who graduated, like I said, a class of 12, and they used to always talk about, so they used to always say, oh, I only got into school because I was in the top percent of my class.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't take much. So, and they were okay with, coming to a bigger school and just staying there, because to them, they made it from, where they were of, 100 people. Now they're in a place where it's, 12,000 people in a city or a small city. And, they're comfortable with it. They don't see evolving to as if you, like what you do, you want to keep going and taking the next step, where, some people think that next step is their last step. They're like, oh, I'm comfortable, I'm making a living. And that goes back to just being in your comfort zone. Once you get somewhere and you're comfortable, why would I, venture outside of this to fail again,
Right. Yeah. And it's never just one step. Right. And that's an interesting thought. I didn't think of it. Maybe some people really do think one step, you made it, and that's it. Okay, so I want to talk to you about your hotel experience a little bit too.
Yeah.
We're kind of closing in on our time, but because you're a hotel guy, we're Hospitality MD. We
Yeah.
want to talk about that too. Do you find a connection between what you've done with the community, what you've done for youth, and what you're doing in the hotel space?
Yeah, I actually think I credit my success for what I did in the community and like from back home to here because even when I got in college up here, I started at the front desk just as a clerk, front desk representative, and through my connections throughout the city of Superior, venturing over to the city of Duluth, and just always being there to help out and volunteer at different businesses when they have events, or if somebody needs a room, go ahead and give them a discount or comp in a room for somebody's loved one. You know that really leaves a memorable mark with people. And I credit the position I'm in now. I mean, I'm over 5 hotels, and I didn't go to school to be in hospitality. Like I went to school for marketing and management. I mean, I would have did something in hospitality, but I don't think it would have been working in hotels. So it was something that just kind of, I guess, I guess it led me this way, just because of the fact that I love working with people, and you have to be. I feel like you have to have a good heart or have good intentions to do what we do in hospitality.
So I just got chills, by the way, when you were saying that. At the beginning, you were talking about people who, when they turn to the streets from a young age, they're chasing short-term money, short-term gains, but that never lasts for a long time. Um, and just now you mentioned sometimes, you're building a relationship. If somebody needs something, you might give them a discount or comp something for a loved one or whatever. What would you say to the many hotel operators out there who would say you're losing money, you can't do that, that's wrong? What would you say to those people? Because there's a lot of them out there, I'm sure you know.
Oh yeah, easily. And I tell them what I tell people in person. Well, if you're losing money, you're also losing a relationship. And you're losing a relationship that they know. So you're also losing two relationships in one, just because you don't want to, because you're being stingy over a few dollars. Always look at it as you're investing in somebody. That's just like when the school gives you money. When the government gives you money, they're investing in you. They want that money back.
Right.
Not saying you're always going to get it back, but they want that money back. And when you help somebody out, it's kind of like an investment into your relationship, not as in like you're investing in them to pay you back, but you're investing in that relationship. And a lot of hotels I've seen people say, or come to my hotel and say they'll never stay at, a better hotel that, might be a little bit better than a little bit more upscale, but they'll always come and stay with me because of the relationship I have and the way that they're treated. So if you're thinking because somebody said, I don't want to pay this, or, oh, this is kind of high, and you can't, oh, well, I could take $5 off, $10 off. Like, is that really going to hurt you in the long run where they might have their family reunion here, or they might bring their wedding down here, or they might have a friend that's getting married, or have a friend that's in business that's coming to the area, and then you gain that relationship. So basically, essentially, you're losing out on relationships over money, and you shouldn't do that. A lot of people do that because they're so money oriented that they're not thinking of the long term gains.
So I think it's a great full circle kind of conversation, you know, short-term gains, just like the kid who turns to the streets, just like the hotel operator who doesn't want to, who doesn't want to throw somebody a bone because they want to get that. You got to maintain our rate. We can't give anything away, for
Exactly.
free ever. It's just short-term gains over long-term prosperity. And I think once people start to shift their mindset that the long game it's like there's a valiance to the long game. There's a just a certain, it just feels better when you're doing it for the right reasons, and you're shooting for, the future versus shooting for, oh, did we, hopefully we got in our labor POR for this month. Because that's that's anxiety, that it's just, I don't want to think like that. It sounds miserable.
Exactly. And it's a lot of people that do.
Right. And then they wonder why their hotel is failing. Because really, if you are in a position where, and granted, I think this is how it was like in 2019 and 2018 and post recession, when the revenue was great, pre-COVID, revenue was great. And people thought that they don't need to have relationships because the guests will continue to show up and the revenue is going to be good. And we're breaking records every year for occupancy and rate. So it doesn't matter. We're just going to keep on pushing. Well, now we know that the guests won't show up if they don't want to show up. And we know that the only way that you're like, when you get business, chances are it's because of a relationship that you have with somebody. So maybe it was short-term gains in 2018 and 2019, but I bet those hotels are suffering right now. And you see a lot of salespeople who are laid off. You're a regional director of sales for your company, and you're still there. Mm-hmm. You go, and those relationships go with you, right?
Exactly. And what's amazing about that is I was the sales manager during the pandemic. So the hotel I was working at, they closed it in April. So I was laid off for a month, and then they reopened in May. So everybody I had, they still came back, all my clients and everybody else, they just rebooked with us and they stayed. And then in September, I became the regional sales manager. And that's not because I know everything about hospitality. That's just based off of my value and the relationships that I have in the community.
It's irreplaceable. It's really irreplaceable. You can't beat it. And say you were to leave Oliver Companies tomorrow, I have a feeling that all of your clients would follow you wherever you went, and you would probably take their business elsewhere. As a result, not saying you're going to do that, but I have a feeling that
not saying that.
If the CEO is listening, it was just a hypothetical. But Marquis, thank you for your time today. I really, really enjoyed our conversation, and your contributions to hospitality and to the community are just so inspiring and super admirable. Like, I really enjoyed our conversation today. So thank you.
Thank you. I enjoyed it as well. And thank you for having me on. I look forward to speaking with you in the future.
Hey guys, thanks so much for listening to this week's interview. Be sure to connect with Marquis on LinkedIn if you haven't already, and follow Hospitality MD on all of our social media channels. Be sure to tune in Fridays at 11 a.m. for our live streams right here on YouTube, as well as LinkedIn and Facebook. We'll see you next week with another interview.